It's the weekend and you have financial questions that need answering. That can only mean one thing. It's time for Jill on Money, the show that takes the mystery out of your finances. Here's your host, Jill Schlesinger.
Welcome to the Jill on Money show. We are coming to you live from the Capital One Bank studios. I want some Capital One banners so we can put some pictures up on the Instagram, Mark. What do you think you can get that for us? I know he's basically saying that's not his department. He doesn't do sales. Mark is actually the worst salesperson in the world. He's this kind of salesperson who would say, "You know what? You don't need my product. Forget it." I understand. You're the anti-salespeople. Here's what we're selling. We are selling financial advice here, but it's free. You get to just talk to us whenever you want. And all you have to do is send us an email. The email address is askjill@jillonmoney.com. And what's cool about it is if you send us some details, we will try to help you figure out what's going on and how to best address the issue that's arisen. It can be a tax question. It can be an estate question. It could be an investment question. Often we do retirement questions. But it almost could be anything that is bothering you, that has money attached to it. Maybe it's a career question. We've been known to field a few of those before, you know? Okay, so, Mark, where is this caller from? Okay, we have got Virginia on the line from Buffalo, who probably listens to us on WBEN in Buffalo, one of our favorite stations. Hello, Virginia. Welcome to the show. How are you?
Fine, Jill. How are you today?
Fantastic. What can I do for you?
Well, Jill, my question is, when do I stop contributing to my IRAs? I am 65 years old, single, no dependents. I work full-time. I have been working all my life. I've accumulated approximately $2 million, most of it in IRAs. And I usually contribute to the max every year.
Okay. That's great. Congratulations. That's very exciting. Because, you know, this is like one of the good problems to have, right? Like, oh, I have so much money saved and I can still save. Should I keep saving? So that's fantastic. Congratulations. Really well done. How much do you earn right now, Virginia?
Approximately $140,000 a year.
Okay. So you're a good saver. Do you have your nice emergency reserve fund as well, just sort of sitting aside there with your expenses?
Well, actually, I don't, and I guess that's part of my question. I have maybe $10,000 in cash that I can get my hands on pretty quickly.
Right.
But
I know you could take money out of retirement accounts, but it's just that then you have to pay tax on it, so that's a bummer. So right now, you said IRAs. You're an employee. Are you using an IRA or a 401k right now?
Actually, 401k, and then I have my personal IRAs that I've transferred from other jobs.
I see.
Rolled over.
So how much are you contributing to the 401k right now?
The max.
So you're putting in $24,500?
Correct.
Wow. And when you do that, how's your cash flow? Because you don't have a lot of money in cash, so it's like you're living on everything else?
I'm living on everything else. I do have a small mortgage and a car payment, but no credit card debt or student loans or anything like that.
How much is the interest on the car loan?
1.9.
Oh, my God. It's hard to pay that off, right? And the interest on the mortgage?
3.9.
Okay. How much is left on that small mortgage?
Less than $90,000.
Okay. And the house is worth how much?
Probably $425,000, $450,000.
Great. Fantastic. So how much longer do you think you want to work?
Well, that's the question. I hope I'm in good health. I love my job. I would hope that I would work at least another 2 or 3 years.
Fantastic. That's great. So here's what I think. I think that you've got plenty of money in your retirement accounts. I mean, have you ever looked to see really what you need to live on? Is it something like 10 grand a month, 9 grand a month, or something like that?
I actually keep very close tabs on.
Why does that not surprise me?
Probably, I could probably live on. My expenses are probably around between $5,000 and $7,000 a month.
Let's say 7 a month. Okay, so that's fine. That's great. And would you be entitled to a pension?
No.
Okay. Social Security benefit at your age, well, let's do age 70 because I think you might get there. What do you know what the benefit is? Future Social Security?
I want to say it's about $3,500, maybe a little less.
Okay. That's pretty great, though. So you got probably half of your expenses, at least pre-tax, through Social Security. You've got plenty of money in your retirement accounts so that you don't have to worry about that. Here's what I would do. You ready?
Yeah.
Number one, I'm going to take you off the hook. Don't put so much money into your retirement account. You can back off. You've got tons of money in your IRAs. We do need to build up that emergency reserve fund. By the time you are ready to retire, I'd love you to have 50 grand in cash.
Okay.
Okay. So I would pull back the 401k and I know it's not as tax efficient, but you're going to get clocked in retirement when you have to start taking money out of all of those IRAs and the 401k. It's all taxable. So I need you to have some money to kind of float you for a while. So even if you took, let's say, I don't know, let's say instead of putting 24 grand a year, you put $10,000 into your 401k, and the rest of the money is going to go into your cash account. That's it.
Okay.
And build it up slowly but surely. And then by the time you retire, if you have your 50 grand, that's going to be great. The car payment will probably be done by then. The mortgage is cheap. You don't have to worry about it. But you are in that very enviable situation where you've sort of oversaved for retirement. And so I would much prefer you build up your non-retirement assets right now while you have the cash flow instead of adding to that IRA account. You're going to be perfectly fine in retirement. You're going to get mad because you're going to say, oh, darn it, I have to take out so much money and it's taxable. No need to keep saving. In fact, if you wanted to pull back your 401k simply to get the match from your employer and really get going on that, building up that cash account sooner rather than later, I'm fine with that too.
Okay.
Sound good?
Okay. Sounds like a plan.
I love it. Good luck to you. Well done. Fantastic.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
You've been a big part of it, and I think I mentioned in my email, you used to sit in for Bob Brinker.
No, I didn't. I might have, but I might. But you know what? I'll take credit for it. Is that good?
Okay.
All right. Take care. Thanks so much, Virginia from Buffalo. Boy, that's a good question. Hey, do you need some help? Let us weigh in. Let us help steer you, guide you, coach you, cheerlead for you. Ask Jill at JillOnMoney.com. That's the email address. During the break, head over to our website, JillOnMoney.com, and sign up for our free weekly newsletter. We'll be right back.
Do I invest here? Should I put my money there? Jill Schlesinger can help you. Back to Jill on Money.
You're back with Jill on Money. And this is the program that takes the mystery out of your financial life. And we love talking to you, and we love hearing your stories. Some of you may be interested to know that those stories have helped me dramatically in my own career. First of all, I was recently asked a lot about the financial crisis, 10-year anniversary of the financial crisis. And somebody said to me, well, how is it that you were able to explain things in a way that people could really get it? So complicated. And I credit my early days, not just giving financial advice to regular people, but also talking to people on the radio. I did that while I was managing money, and it really did serve me well. So when I had this idea about writing a book, which is only about, I don't know, a dozen years in the making, because I don't know, I couldn't get my act together. A lot of things get in the way. Writing a book is hard. I have a whole new appreciation for all the people who write books, who come into our studios and give us these interviews. It's hard work. But I now have a book, and it is available for pre-order. And it is called The Dumb Things Smart People Do with Their Money. 13 Ways to Right Your Financial Wrongs. And just, by the way, it took us like so long to get the image on the front cover of the book down. I had many iterations of this, but I like it. Mark, is it kind of like Mad Men-esque, isn't it? Has like a feel to it. By the way, Goodman, friend of the show, says to me, I don't like the guy in the front cover. I said, the book's final. Keep your opinions to yourself. She says, with taking that criticism so well. Anyway, the book does go on sale February 5th, but you can pre-order now. And so here's the deal. The reason I wrote this book is that I felt like, like the world does not need another financial book. I know. But I thought that I had a unique perspective on this, which is I have been in the business of managing money, of trading, and of hearing from people. And if you listen to this show, I really don't have a judgment when it comes to people making money mistakes, because I really think that we all make mistakes. We are flawed. This is the human condition, right? And sometimes we are donkeys when it comes to our money. And I don't want to blame anyone for that. It's just the way it is. Sometimes we make really bad decisions. Because why? Because we have blind spots. This is emotional stuff. I'm not a shrink, but I can tell you that many parts of this book have been influenced by research I have done and stories I have heard that led me to understand why we have such a hard time making smart financial decisions. So we've got lots of different parts of the book, starting with some of the stuff that you guys call about all the time, which is you buy financial products that you just don't understand. Or maybe it's you made a well-intentioned mistake. You saved for college for your kids before you dealt with your own financial life. Or maybe you've taken too much risk or too little risk. Maybe you just feel so weird about talking to your parents about aging. And maybe you're just a complete psycho and you're saddling your kids with your own money issues. So in the book, I've got these 13 chapters, and it breaks down lots of different things that are happening day in, day out for so many folks. And week in, week out, we hear from you. And I want you to know that this is a book that just really focuses on how to prevent you from doing some of the things that you may have already done, but also not to make a big judgment about it. Let's move on. Let's figure it out. Whether it's retirement planning or college financing, insurance, real estate, how you can save some money. My publicist wrote, it might just be the smartest investment you make all year. Did you like that line? You knew I didn't write that. I didn't write that line. But it is true, because I don't want to say that. Yeah, for $25, you can maybe save yourself thousands or tens of thousands of dollars. So it seems good. Anyway, you can pre-order the book at Amazon and Barnes & Noble. There's a million links. Just go to JillOnMoney.com and click on the book tab. Click on the book tab, and you'll be able to pre-order the book. And while you are on the website, don't forget to please sign up for our weekly newsletter. It's free. The weird thing about social media, I just got a note from someone who thinks he worked with me on the commodities exchange in New York, although that was like a scarring experience, so I'm not sure I actually want to contact him, but let's see. I'll figure it out. Cynthia wants to know about her retirement. She says she listens to us on WTIC in Connecticut. She just turned 65. She's working full-time, but my job is in jeopardy. I'm expecting a layoff any day. I'd like to retire. I don't think I have enough. I have $50,000 in savings. That's good. $550,000 in retirement accounts, $100,000 in a simple annuity, $80,000 in a money market, $12,000 in strategic income, $50,000 in the Freedom 20, 20, 25, and 30, and then $114,000 in the S&P 500, $90,000 mid cap, $80,000 value, 23. Okay, I also have $25,000 in other stock and another $10,000 in a health savings account. I have a mortgage, 7 years left. Doesn't seem bad. The mortgage, $110,000 at 3.5%. The house is valued at $250,000. No other debt except $4,000 in credit card debt. No car payment. Where should I put my money to maximize income potential, reduce risk, since my asset allocations is 51 stock, 24 bonds, 16% short-term, 9% foreign? I'm single, female, no children, in fair health. One dependent, my 90-year-old mom. If I'm laid off now, I should be fine with 3 to 4 months with the package they're doing. I also can get some contracting work, but I don't want to go through looking for full-time work. Been there, done that. Okay, so a couple of things that we need to think about. One is, I don't know what your full retirement age. I bet it's 66 and change. So you would have Social Security if you can hang on till that period, right? So you can do that. I don't think your allocation's bad. I just think it's weird to have you don't really probably need to be in the Freedom Fund 20, 20, 25, 30. You could probably just use an S&P 500 and the strategic income. Maybe I would just keep a little bit extra money in cash while I can. I think the guidance that I would have is to probably sit down and really take a look at what your expenses are. Look at what the cost of care for your mom is, what her income is. Look at your Social Security, and then delay invading this money in your retirement account for as long as possible. If you need help, you should try to find a fee-only financial planner, someone who will just do some retirement planning for you. But the game here, Cynthia, is to delay tapping into this retirement pile of money and let it grow. And so what I need to understand is whether you can live on your Social Security or not. I don't know whether your mom lives with you or not. Maybe you can use her Social Security and what the costs are. I think if you have $4,000 in credit card debt, I would pay that off as quickly as possible. And now that you sort of have this fear of being laid off any day, maybe that's not going to come for weeks or months, I would probably stop putting money into retirement and just take all the money and build up your cash reserve as much as you can. So if you want to get back in touch with us with some more details, we'd love to hear from you. The email address here, askjill@jillonmoney.com. And thank you so much for writing. That's not a great situation, but you're thinking ahead, which is smart. All right. It's Jill on Money. Hop onto the website, jillonmoney.com. Click on the book tab and pre-order my book. It's going to be very exciting. You're going to want to see the dumb things smart people do with their money. Okay, we'll be right back.
Follow Jill on Twitter and Instagram for more personal finance content. Just use the handle @JillOnMoney. Now, back to the show.
You're back with Jill on Money. If you've got a financial question, we'd love to hear from you. Send us an email. Ask Jill@JillOnMoney.com. All right, let's go and hit some emails because we got to get through these. I'm a 32-year-old full-time legal assistant. I have debt of around $55,000. That's school loans and auto loans, a little bit of medical debt. I purchased a house 4 years ago with savings I had back then. Now I have equity of about $120,000. Would it be smart to just refinance to right now before rates maybe go up and pay off the rest of my debt, which is around $1,500 a month? Yeah. I mean, it may cost you. It's going to cost you money. But I think it will be a more efficient way. Remember, when you refinance, you will not be able to write off the interest associated with the debt part of your loan. So you're going to have to keep very good records. I know. What a pain in the neck. But that's the way it is. I'm sorry to say. Okay? So, there you go. Rick writes, I've got a question about fixed annuities. What do you think about these? So it's not a fixed annuity. What he's actually talking about is that he's talking about an index-linked annuity, I believe, because it says when the market goes up, your annuity value goes up. When the market goes down, you don't lose, but you got to lock your money up for 5 or 10 years plus. No fees on these? How is there no fee? Mark, have you ever heard about an annuity with no fee? I mean, it could be a low fee, but I think that there's plenty of fees out there. So I'd be a bit careful on that. I'm just, Mark, I don't know. I've never heard of a no fee annuity. I think so. How about this? Why don't you give us a holler? We'll get you on the air, or you can send us why don't you send us a copy of what was presented to you? How about that? Elizabeth writes that she's self-employed. She makes about $30,000 a year. Okay. I have about the same in total savings. I am 55 years old. I rent, but also own a condo in Portland, Oregon. If I sold the property, I would make $75,000 after the loan is paid off. While it's not enough to buy a property for cash here in Virginia, it is enough to buy in Tulsa, Oklahoma, which are two very different markets. Should I bite the bullet now and move, giving me time to restart my business, or struggle through another couple of years? I love the idea of owning something totally free and clear. This way I could sock away money for retirement during the next 15 years. My income just meets my expenses, and I hate that feeling. Would welcome thoughts you have. She says, I could grow my business here, but I've been at it for about 10 years. It hasn't grown. I have other skills. I'm college educated, computer proficient, personal training. It's just too expensive. So, yeah, I mean, look, if you can move to a cheaper place, it works. It works a lot better. Maybe what you should do is sell the condo in Portland, Oregon, but don't buy anything new. Rent in Tulsa. Let's see if you like it. What if you hate it there and then you've bought something? I would rent for a year and not try to go too crazy with that. All right. Okay. Here is from Tim. I hope this question's not too trivial. There is no trivial question, although Mark likes to think that the people who ask whether they should spend a certain amount of money on a ring is a trivial question. But I still like to hear about it. I usually uncover something else when you ask the question. Anyway, Tim says he retired from the Army in 1993. He also retired from a state and receives my deceased brother's teacher's annuity. Between retirement, Social Security, VA comp for disability, I'm bringing in $9,000 a month. Holy smokes. So he's 69. His wife is 75. They got $150,000 in savings. And essentially, he says, we don't have long-term care. I've tried numerous advisors in the past. I haven't been satisfied. I'm at 70. I'm trying to figure out what I should be doing from a conservative point of view. We don't want to risk our money, but I do want to be responsible. Hope you can push me in the right direction. We can put away anywhere from $3,000 to $4,000 a month through. Wow. You know, look, if you don't want to take risk, if you just hate it, but, look, you want to do better than a money market, you want to do better than a savings account, there's a few things to think about. One is that you can certainly try to build a CD ladder. You can go to depositaccounts.com. You can buy longer dated CDs, which are actually starting to pay out some money. I mean, it's amazing. It's been so many years of just rotten rates. But for example, if you go to deposit accounts, you look at 6-year rates. Hey, you know what? You can get more than 3% for a 6-year CD. And so maybe you start adding into your mix, buying some CDs. And maybe you do it with the existing money you have. Not a lot, just a little bit at a time. Then the other idea would be to maybe add a bond fund to the mix and maybe a teeny tiny stock fund, just an allocation of like 20% or so to keep up with inflation. You don't have to do it all at once. And if you really hate risk, you don't have to do it at all. Look, you got plenty of income. Nothing bad is going to happen. But I do think that trying to earn more than the general inflation rate is what you're trying to do. And you can do that by having a little bit of research. Okay? Good. Hey, just want to say one last thing. Before we, get out of this September month of like weird hurricane noise, etc. It's also Hurricane Harvey and Hurricane Irma anniversaries. Could you guys just pull out your property insurance policies and check out what you have? And remember that if you are in a flood insurance plane, if you're designated in that flood insurance area, go buy the national flood insurance that's available. It doesn't cover everything. It covers $250,000 to rebuild or repair your home and $100,000 for damaged belongings, but that's better than nothing. Almost all of the policies out there will not cover flood damage. Okay? So you are listening to Jill on Money. Go check your property insurance policy during the break. And when we return, we'll have more of your questions. We'll be right back.
Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, she's all over the place. Go to JillOnMoney.com to find it all. Now back to the show with Jill Schlesinger.
You're back with Jill on Money, and let's get through some emails. If you've got a question and you're too shy to come on the air, just send us a lot of information about yourself. Ask Jill at JillOnMoney.com. John writes that he and his wife are in their 60s. They're debt-free. They've got a net worth of about $2.5 million. They pay $200 per month in long-term care insurance premiums, which would provide up to $300,000 in benefits. I'm sure the premiums will increase as we age. Can we and should we stop these premiums and self-insure for this event, which usually takes place for folks in their 80s and beyond? By the time we're in our 80s, our net worth would be less than it is now. Okay, so we just got a good piece of information there, which is they're living off their nest egg of $2.5 million. I don't know how much they are drawing every month. It may be that $200 per month, I would have to know who the provider is, first of all. $200 a month with $300,000 in benefits is kind of a small dollar amount, frankly. I think. I'm loath to tell you to get rid of this without knowing, A, what your health situation is currently, and B, how much you're drawing from your nest egg. Because here's the risk. If in 10, you're right, maybe something bad happens in your 80s, but what happens if you're 75 and now you've got a net worth of $1.5 million? And I don't know whether that includes your house or not. But if something bad happened then, and your wife's 5 years, so his wife's 64, he's 69. If something bad happens, in your 70s, that could be bad news. So I guess I need a little bit more information, John, if you wouldn't mind. I am inclined to keep policies before I really dig through this. Yes, you could potentially self-insure. That's not a problem. But I would feel less secure about that recommendation if I knew that your net worth of $2.5 million included $1 million house. So if you mean your $2.5 million is invested, that might be a good clue that, hey, you know what? You can self-insure. So a tiny bit more information would be helpful. Thank you. Okay, here we go. This is Barb, who's 67 and a half. So Barb makes 50 grand a year, and she's also collecting half of her ex-husband's Social Security, which amounts to $1,000 a month. She's got no debt, owns her car, owns her home. She will plan to work for 2.5 more years till she's 70, and then she will collect her Social Security, $1,700 a month. She says, I have, let's see, $100,000. See, I had to read how I squinted on that. $100,000 in savings account. It's earning 1.75%. That's it. That's all she's got. Should I invest any of my savings? No retirement plan? That seems interesting. If you have no retirement plan, then I am not interested in investing $100,000. What about you, Mark? I think that's a little, maybe I would do like 20,000 at the most in an index fund. But I'm wondering what you're going to have in terms of retirement income besides that $1,700 a month. That's number one. And number two, do you have a retirement account? This is the segment where I need more information. I'm so sorry. If you don't have a retirement account and the $100,000 is all you have, okay, then I could see taking a sliver of it, because you're young, maybe 20%, and putting it into an index fund. But, if this is the first time you've ever been an investor and the first time you see the market go down, you're going to freak out and bail, then no, I don't want you to do that. So, Barb, how about you send me a tiny bit more information and we will absolutely, positively get back to you. And here we have an email from Eugenio, who's 65, and he's got 600 grand in his 401k, and he wants to know what happens to him if he takes a lump sum. Well, nothing will happen to you. You're not going to take a lump sum out of your 401k. You would take your 401k and you would have a direct rollover from your 401k plan into an IRA rollover account, and you would roll it over without any taxation. You're allowed to do that. But be careful about rolling that over until you figure out what you actually want to do with the money. Maybe it's better off if you actually stay in the 401k. That might be good. So no tax due if you do a direct rollover from your 401k plan to, say, Vanguard or to T. Rowe Price or to Charles Schwab. No hit on taxes. One place to the other. 401k becomes IRA rollover. But if you actually withdraw the money, you're going to pay taxes. You're going to get hammered. So don't do that. Do not do that. Okay? Direct rollover. And maybe tell me what your choices are within the 401k. Maybe it'd be a good thing to stay there. Some 401k plans have negotiated very cheap fees on their accounts, and they allow you to stick around. And if that's the case, maybe that's something you want to do. It's worth investigating at the very least. Okay? All right. You are listening to Jill on Money. This is the program where money is not scary and it's not boring. It's a bit of fun. So if you have a financial question, give us a holler. Our email address is askjill@jillonmoney.com. We'll be right back. You're back with Jill on Money. And before we close the hour out, I am going to plug someone else's website for a change. Oh, gosh, I cracked myself up. Anyway, we get about a ton of questions about Social Security. And some of these questions are fairly straightforward. Should I take my Social Security early? Should I wait? But to answer the question, when should I take Social Security to maximize my benefits? I've got an expert for you. And there is an entire website that is built for you. It's called MaximizeMySocialSecurity.com. MaximizeMySocialSecurity.com. It was created by a guy named Lawrence Kotlikoff. He is an economics professor at Boston University at BU. And what he's trying to figure out is how to help people really navigate the Social Security system. And what's kind of cool about it is that, you know, if your advisor doesn't give you the good advice, there's actually a little part of this website for advisors. But for regular people like you and me, what you can do is you can pay them to actually help you crunch the numbers. $40, one time only, annual household license. $250 for an annual financial advisor license. If I were a financial advisor again, let me tell you something. That'd be the easiest $250 I actually would pay. Anyway, $40 per year covers all your benefits. You can run all these reports, and I think that it makes a lot of sense. And you can actually pay up once you buy your $40 household permit there. You can actually pay up and pay $250 for a 1-hour phone consultation where the person will help confirm all the data inputs and review and interpret the results. Isn't that cool? Mark, maybe we should actually just sign up and get a license for professionals. Yeah, exactly. I'm not going to think about that. Anyway, check it out, gang. MaximizeMySocialSecurity.com. Okay, you are listening to Jill on Money, and next hour we're going to have the interview, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't send us a question. Please do it. Email us, askjill@jillonmoney.com. We'll be right back.
It's the weekend, and that can only mean one thing. You're listening to Jill on Money, the show that takes the mystery out of your finances. Here's your host, Jill Schlesinger.
All right, it's hour number 2 of the Jill on Money show. We are broadcasting live from the Capital One Bank Studios in New York. This is the first time I'm with Mark since his big news. Can I out you or not? All right, he's telling me I can. Mark got engaged. Woo! I was much more excited about it than he was in the lead up. He was very close to the vest. So he goes on vacation overseas, and I literally am asking him every day, did it happen yet? Did it happen yet? Did it happen yet? Did it happen yet? Did you find that annoying or not? Did you find it amusing? I'm insane. I really am insane. But it's an exciting time here in the ever-expanding Jill on Money family by marriage. I mean, I know her. She's been around for a while. How long have you guys been dating? 4 years it will be. All right, now, this is the program that takes the mystery out of your financial life. And you can actually email us what's going on in your financial life. Ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. Ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. You know, we often get so many questions about retirement that we thought that there was a really interesting book, because you guys often call and say, is Social Security solvent? How am I going to reach my retirement? Well, we've got co-authors of a book called Rescuing Retirement. It's Teresa Ghilarducci and Tony James. They've co-written a book. Really interesting. She's an academic. Tony was the former chairman of Blackstone, the big private equity and money management firm. And they came together and have written what I think is a smart solution to how to rescue retirement. So here's our interview with Teresa and Tony. So you've identified this problem, which is essentially a crisis, because there is a gap between the amount of money most Americans need to save and what they will collect from Social Security. Can you go into like what has happened with that gap since the advent of the 401k and the decline of a pension plan?
Yeah, sure. And even the way that you phrase that question, that there's a gap between what people should have and what people have, often focuses attention on something wrong the person is doing. But in fact, what has happened over the past 40 years is not that people have gotten more flawed or more focused on consumption or somehow don't save enough. What happened is that we developed a flawed system, that the system has moved from an automatic system where if you worked and you had a pension plan, money was automatically put aside for you. You were automatically in it. You couldn't leave. You couldn't take money out. And the money was invested professionally. And we moved to a voluntary, individual-directed, very commercial platform where people decided to save, and then the employer might or might not put something in it. The person had to direct where that investments would go. And worse, and we're seeing it now, 40 years after the system is built, that now people who are lucky enough to do everything right have a big lump of money and they have to decide how to spend it down. So we're asking from individuals things they cannot do. And so no wonder we have this unfolding disaster.
And it strikes me as this weird, unlucky, lucky timing situation, Tony, in that the accidental 401k plan, right, that Ted Benna kind of created out of a different reason, but it coincides with the beginning of this great bull market in the early 80s. We get the shift away. I wonder, had it been flipped, if he came up with this brilliant idea and it was in a long bear market, whether people would have said, like, this is horrible and go back to pensions. That's not what happened. And all of a sudden people thought they were brilliant and they could make tons of money. And it was reframed by the industry as this is about personal freedom and control. How did this whole thing shift from a pension to a 401k, and how did the industry capitalize on that?
I think you're right. I think the bull market hid some of the problems for a while, but the shift wasn't driven by people, employees. It was driven by employers. And it was driven by employers. Why? Because essentially a 401k is cheaper and less risky for the employer. By definition, therefore, it's worse for the employee. That what comes out of one pocket goes into the other. So employees didn't squawk in mass the way they might have because of the bull market, but it allowed the employer to make a very rational decision of getting rid of the risk and the volatility and the other things that came with a defined benefit pension plan. We've hit a time of stagnant incomes. People my generation, not only a lot of us had, when we started working, our employers had defined benefit pension plans, but we had a great bull market at our back. We had rising incomes. We had strong economies, and so on and so forth. Last 15 or 20 years, it's been a different kind of picture. And so there were a lot of things that made our generation protected them a little bit because they were lucky, and now the new generation are not lucky, and they're going to pay the price.
So, Teresa, I also want to go back a little bit, a little Social Security history, because obviously when the Social Security Act was signed in 1935, it was not intended to be this single safety net not safety net. It was intended to be a safety net. It was not intended to be the only source of retirement income. So can you go back and just give us a tiny bit of history? Because, I got to rely on the academic in the room. The two of us schlubs, we'll just make anything up, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Great question, because our whole system now is built on the Social Security platform. And our proposal builds on the Social Security platform. We copied in 1935 a lot of what the Europeans had already done, and also the Railroad Retirement Fund. It was designed to be a base of support for occupational pensions. So in Europe, they had a Social Security system, but on top of that, strong unions, big employers, and a supplemental plan. And the Railroad Retirement Fund also was a base of support for railroad workers, but on top of that, they had their own union-negotiated pension plans. So the idea is that you would have the Social Security Administration would provide social insurance for not just retirement, but it grew to be an insurance for disability and for survivors and for even children. And so the system is insurance, and it's pay as you go. There's not money going into the system being invested, and what you have there in the fund is what you get. It's a pay-as-you-go intergenerational contract.
So people who are working today pay for their nanas who are retired. When the system was initially conceived, there were a lot more people working than there were people retired. And now that's going to start shifting, and the demographics have shifted. But the Social Security was one part of it. A pension was a second part of it, right? Yeah. And what was the third part?
Well,
then?
On the top, just like, the food pyramid where you have sort of your whiskey and your chocolate at the very, very
My favorite
tip,
part.
Right, exactly. But it's small, Jill. It's small. On the base are your fruits and vegetables and your grains. That's your Social Security. In the middle, with the meat and the milk, is your advance-funded private pension system. And then the very tippy top was to be your personal wealth. And for most people, that's really their house.
Oh, interesting.
It's not any kind of personal savings. So it was layered, not as equal pillars or a three-legged stool. That's the wrong metaphor. It was really a pyramid where for most people, bottom 90%, the base is Social Security, pay as you go. The middle part is an advance funded. What you put in is what you get. And then on top of that is whatever wealth that you've accumulated.
We'll get back to our interview with Tony James and Teresa Ghilarducci in just a minute. You are listening to Jill on Money. During the break, if you'd like, head on over to JillOnMoney.com where you can sign up for our free weekly newsletter. We'll be right back.
If you've missed any part of the show or want to check out a past show, go to JillOnMoney.com for more great personal finance content.
You're back with Jill on Money, and we're talking about retirement and how to rescue retirement with our guests, Teresa Ghilarducci and Tony James. They've come together and wrote a really interesting way to solve what is clearly a pretty major league crisis. Part of that crisis around retirement has to do with how the current system of planning for retirement is flawed, that it was predicated on conditions that were in place decades ago. How do we fix it? We're talking to Tony James and Teresa Ghilarducci. Tony, there is a somewhat startling gap when we look at all these numbers and you look at every piece of research that says Americans aren't saving enough. And you're right. I realize that, when I'm reading this, this is not to place blame. This is not, you are not saying, you guys have not written a book that says you stupid Americans need to save more. You're saying the system is flawed and therefore we need to break the system, right?
Or fix the system. I'd rather put it that way.
I want to break it first, and then no, I don't want to do that. Okay, so let's fix the system. So before we do that, but let me just say, there are people who are going to hear this and they're going to say, here's this big financial dude from Wall Street, and he's about to articulate a system that puts money in the hands of Wall Street banks and institutions. Now I want to ask you the critical question, why do you care so much about this?
I guess one of the things that I try to do in my life is give back to society, frankly, in a lot of different ways. I can't think of a bigger problem than this one to help with. It's not speculation. It is inevitable that this problem will be there. Demographics move slowly and they're predictable. People with $14,500 average savings do not have a way to get to the $300,000 they need to retire and maintain a middle-class lifestyle. It's impossible now if we don't change the system to help them. So that's what I want to do. If my legacy was, with Teresa, we made a difference in the lives of millions and millions of people in their old age so that they could live comfortably, I can't think of a better thing to do with my whole life.
Let's talk about how we're going to fix this system. Do you want to talk about fixing Social Security? It's not the thesis in your book that you want to do, but do you want to do? Should we talk a little bit about that?
Well, let me talk about that to start with, because one of the things I came strongly to this, and Teresa probably would have gone and fixed Social Security, but I took the view very strongly that Social Security was such a third rail and such a polarizing issue in Washington, D.C. There was no point in proposing a fix to Social Security because it was not going to get enacted. And one of the things that we've tried to do in this book is not just create some theory that no one cares about and is impossible and that a few fringe people love in one party or another. We wanted to create something that was absolutely practical, implementable, and bipartisan, because that's the only way we will get something done in America. We're not talking theoretically. We want to get something done. We want to help people.
Mm-hmm. Why don't you lay out the fix and what you guys have conceived? So it starts with essentially a plan where each worker has money set aside and must participate in a retirement, as they say in Britain, scheme, meaning plan. So explain the scheme.
Okay. So simply put, every worker takes 1.5% of every paycheck and puts it in their own account in their own name that they control. Now, it doesn't go into some government maw, and it's only 1.5%. I'll come back to that, but it's much lower than anyone thought was possible. That 1.5% is matched by an equal amount from the employer. So collectively, every year, every paycheck from the time they start working at 20 till the time they retire at 65, that money goes into their retirement account. For workers that live paycheck to paycheck, of which there are a lot in America still, we redeploy the tax benefits for contributions to 401k into tax credits to subsidize that 1.5%. That money is already in the tax, so it doesn't add to taxes or anything else. It's already in there. We're just redeploying it and making it, frankly, a little more even-handed, so everyone in America gets it, not just the privileged few that take most of the advantage of the 401k deduction. That money then in your own account is then invested with the idea of, how do I have the savings I need when I retire? Not instantly liquid that I want to take out tomorrow, but how do I have the savings I need when I retire several decades from now? And that's invested like pension plans are invested. Then when you retire, you get a lifelong annuity for you and your spouse. You don't have to guess, or worry, am I going to outlive my savings, or what do I invest in, or how much can I live off, or anything like that. You, just like a defined benefit pension plan, you get a lifelong payment as long as you and your spouse live. So it's very much like a defined benefit plan for all of America, because it's your money, though, that based on your savings, it doesn't create an unfunded liability.
And Teresa, this is also interesting because it's your account, it's portable. And we know that Americans are moving jobs all the time. So you have this money. So wherever you work, whether you work for yourself or whether you're like your gig worker or a side hustle, it's the same 1.5% that you put in. Now, if I work for myself, I put 1.5% in as
3.
Yeah, so I put it in for 1.5% as the employer and the employee. Why is the amount so low? It seems so weird to me because it feels like that can't be enough.
Yeah. So first of all, what we've done is create as close as we could a defined benefit plan, a traditional pension plan for everybody. It's professionally invested, and you get a much higher rate of return in a pooled, non-liquid account than you can in your 401k. So that answers the one question you had. How can you get the minimum with such a low amount? Now, it's just a minimum. We advise that over time, a person can voluntarily put more money into it. Many people would like to buy more Social Security credits. Many people would have liked to have bought more defined benefit credits, but it wasn't designed that way. Our system is designed so the floor is 1.5% from each, 3% in total. But for a lot of people who might want to increase their standard of living or not just live on the margin after they supplement Social Security, they might want to add more. So we view the 3% as just a minimum to get to 65% of what you earned if you've saved your whole time, and you get this higher rate of return. That's the difference.
And Jill, I just want to put numbers on that. The average 401k in America today earns a 2 to 3% annual return. That doesn't compound very fast. Mm-hmm. The average pension plan earns between 7 and 8%. That difference, if you think about it, compounding over 40 or 50 years, the length of a career, is huge.
Have you tested this with much lower returns? Because the fear being that we're in this low growth regime, and we say, let's say we didn't do 6.5 or 7. Let's say we did 4 or 5. How do the numbers look with that?
Worse. If you actually get at 6% nominal, then you have to boost the contribution rate a little bit more. But that's the beauty of our plan.
I just want to say, though, if you look backwards, the average pension plan earns 7.65%. We've assumed 6.5% on our plan. So we've assumed lower returns.
I know, but I'm a wimp.
No,
I always
absolutely.
like to look at the worst case.
No,
right?
absolutely. And that's the beauty of our design. And the other ones don't have that kind of design, that if you think the rates are going to be a little bit lower, then you're going to put more in. It's the flexibility. I just want to say one thing about the payout, and that goes back to Social Security. Right now, workers did not clamor to move from a traditional plan to a 401k plan. They want some of the benefits of the defined benefit plan. The other major point we have not mentioned here is that we have a system not that just moved from traditional plans to a 401k plan. We have a system that at the very beginning never covered everybody, but more people were covered under the traditional plan than they are with a 401k. So the hope was the 401k would be so easy for employers, cheaper for employers, and more popular, and we would go from 50% coverage to 80% coverage. That didn't happen. In fact, coverage for any kind of a plan has actually gone down.
It's like in the low 40s?
It's in the high 40s.
High 40s,
High 40s.
okay.
So most people approaching retirement have nothing but Social Security.
We'll get back to our interview and how we can rescue retirement in just a minute. Hey, during the break, hop onto the website, JillOnMoney.com. There's a new tab at the top. It's called Book. I got a new book. It's coming out early next year, but you can pre-order it right now. Go to JillOnMoney.com. Click on the Book tab. Order my book. Help me out. Help a sister out. Okay, we'll be right back.
Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, she's all over the place. Go to JillOnMoney.com to find it all. Now back to the show with Jill Schlesinger.
You're back with Jill on Money, and we're talking about retirement. The reason why we're doing that is that we have great guests, two guests. Teresa Ghilarducci and Tony James. They've just co-written a book. It's called Rescuing Retirement, a plan to guarantee retirement security for all Americans. Now, the thing that's interesting about this is that in general, I think that when people hear about this plan, they're going to be freaking out because there's a compulsory part of it. You've got to participate, right? But there's also this idea that, oh my God, it's going to cost so much money. And who's going to pay for that? The good, fine taxpayers? Is that what's going to happen? If you're freaked out about spending too much money on rescuing an entire generation from poverty, essentially, in retirement, then you've got to listen up to this next segment, because as much as it seems like it should cost a ton of money, it may not. Here's the rest of our interview with Teresa Ghilarducci and Tony James. What is the idea here around the tax burden? Because you mentioned it, Tony, and I think it's kind of interesting. You sort of said, well, you know, most of the 401k plans, the benefits, the tax benefits, go to the wealthier people. Explain why that is to our listeners.
Well, that's one of the most skewed tax benefits out there. It's even more skewed than incomes. So it goes heavily to quite wealthy, high-income people. Most of the benefits of those deductions go to people who are not looking to their 401ks for their retirement. What they make the contributions, I do too, as a way of reducing my taxes, not because I'm going to look to that as my primary source of retirement welfare. So it's a misaligned incentive. There are benefits to people just because we like to pay fewer taxes, but if we didn't do that, we'd do something else. And then there's all kinds of record keeping and other burdens. It's an unloved benefit, actually, and even in the recent tax reform, without pressure from anyone else, the Republicans were talking about doing away with it.
Explain the shift and how the credit would work.
Just starting from what Tony was talking about, right now we spend $140 billion not taxing the 401k money that goes in, and every year there's a buildup that's not taxed as well. So then that's on the table. The federal government, taxpayers are subsidizing the retirement system at $140 billion. So put that $140 billion on the table. Then ask yourself, is there a way to change the way that's spent in a way that ensures retirement security, that more people who need it get the benefit, and the people who would have saved anyway could maybe shave that back. So we take the $140 billion that's paid out as a deduction. So the more you make, the more you get. The more you put in, the more you get. And without changing a penny of government spending, we transform it into a refundable tax credit. So everybody gets $600. The rich and the poor get $600 credit to their account, which of course isn't taxed. It comes from the government. But we designed a plan, and this is in the days, a couple of years ago, when actually we thought Congress cared about balancing the budget or money coming in, was somewhat equal to money coming out over some time period. But we think it's a responsible thing to do, to take the money we have now and engineer it so that it's more effective and efficient. I mean, one of the things
it's hard to say everyone getting the same isn't fair.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Although,
right.
I'm sure that some people would be like, well, don't even give rich people the money, right? Like if maybe you whatever, you could means
We
test
thought
that.
about that too, but we decided to just everyone should get the same. It's hard. It's a fundamental fairness concept. Everyone gets the same amount.
So you get the plan, you call it the GRA system, I should say. As you start talking about this with various people whether it's politicians or business people, what's the pushback that you get?
I would say there are a few constituencies that push back on different things. Some Democratic constituencies would love to see the problem, in a way, become so bad that there was political and social pressure to fix Social Security, that they think that's a more progressive, more liberal way of addressing the same problem. So there is that constituency. Mm-hmm. Most of the Democrats we talk to, though, think hurting a lot of people to make that change is really not.
Yes, we don't like
the right thing to do.
Yes, exactly.
But
most
nonetheless,
people...
there are some who would say, I'd rather see the system fail so that I can effectuate Social Security change. Mm. One of the most hostile groups, I would say, that Teresa and I met with are the financial brokers. Now, not the asset managers, not the BlackRocks of the world or whatnot, because, I think they see the merit of this, and more assets to manage, of course, are better for the people that have them, but better for the managers. But the brokers that charged fees to people to move them around in the 401ks, that cost $50 billion a year out of 401ks that can barely afford it. Under our system, you don't need those anymore. You have pension managers making the allocations.
I think that's the cherry on top for me.
All right, that's the second, and then I would say the third constituency is there is some concern on the part of particularly small businesses. You'll see our book is endorsed by several CEOs of big companies, but small businesses who say, restaurant owners say, gee, if I have to put, it's an added cost for me. 1.5% of my wages now are going into this. On the other hand, if you look at the polling of small businesses, they know their people are vulnerable because they have nothing now. And the last thing a small business is going to do is put in a 401k and have a risk of liability and have to get lawyers and all that stuff. So this makes it so easy. So it actually polls pretty well because it's a simple, low-cost solution for a problem that they recognize. And in a small business, your employees are almost like your family. You know them personally. You see them every day. And the idea of someone who worked for you for many years and retiring and then being destitute is not a good one.
I think most people do want to provide. I really believe that. I think that if it's framed in the correct way and saying, look, this is how you retain workers. This is how you attract workers. Right now we have every employer, large and small, saying, I just can't get anyone. And it does inure to society's benefit. So you'd have to think that everyone's going to be happier when old people can spend money in retirement as well.
Especially small business.
Yeah, exactly.
They spend it around the corner.
And the other thing, healthcare is quite expensive by comparison to this.
Right.
1.5% of a company's wages. Wages in most companies are 40% maybe of total cost. 1.5% is 0.6% of sales.
Okay. Thank you so much to Teresa Ghilarducci and Tony James. We will have a link to the book so you can buy it yourself. When we return, we're going to turn to you and your questions. It's Jill on Money. shoot us a note. Ask Jill at JillOnMoney.com. We'll be right back.
Back to Jill on Money, where Jill Schlesinger helps you take the mystery out of your finances.
You're back with Jill on Money. Hey, it's fall. It's officially fall. Mark, you're not buying it? When do you like to think of fall? You want to just make it, October 1st? It's too warm and humid for Mark. You know, the guy rides his bike everywhere, so it's too hot for that. I'll tell you what, it's hot walking these dogs and terrible for my hair. Just terrible. I put it out there like that. Okay. We're coming off this great interview with Teresa Ghilarducci and Tony James. They wrote a book called Rescuing Retirement. If you've missed any part of that, you can go to JillOnMoney.com and you can click on the listen button. Not this second because it takes a bit for Mark to post it. But we'll be able to give you the highlights of that interview. One of the things we talk about when we think about retirement is Social Security and the Social Security system. Sometimes the answers are so easy with Social Security. Try to delay until your full retirement age, and if possible, till age 70. That's kind of the easy stuff. But there are some twists and turns to the Social Security system that are actually really complicated. And that is my introduction for this email from Larry, who says his wife is a few years older than he is. They both worked long careers. So now I'm getting into the email. My wife originally was on disability, but now is 65 and she's retired. And she receives about $1,800 a month. Okay. Our 12-year-old daughter, and she's 65. Interesting. 12-year-old daughter receives $950 a month. Now, Larry himself, he is going to retire in 3.5 years, and he expects to receive, let's call it $2,450 a month. And his daughter will still be receiving benefits when he retires. The question, will the family maximum apply to us? Now, I, like you, might have said, I don't really know about that family maximum. So I go onto the Social Security website, ssa.gov. And there's a whole long, I'm sorry to laugh because it's an entirely long explanation of this. But let me start by saying major findings. The Social Security Administration's family maximum rules are complex and affect beneficiaries in different ways depending on their earnings levels and benefit types. In particular, the rules that apply to disability beneficiary families differ significantly from those that apply to retirement and survivor beneficiaries because the disabled affects more families. And so now this is interesting because what I'm not clear about is, so we've got that benefit for his wife, which is now $1,800 a month. And then the daughters, which is obviously because not from a retirement standpoint, from a disability standpoint. So we now know we're flagging this. But there's a complicated formula. 150% of the first $1,056. 272% of the workers. Okay. I mean, it's insane. Of the primary insurance amount. So there's this whole long formula. But if I can boil it down to you this way, Larry, the formula yields a maximum for each family that is between 150 and 188% of the workers' basic Social Security benefits. So here is what I would suggest to you. I am not 100% sure whether you're going to hit the maximum. But I think that what you have to look at is you have to go to this page. and again, it's titled Understanding the Social Security Family Maxim. You know what I'm going to do, Mark? I am going to send this to you, and you are going to send this to Larry for me, okay? Because, Larry, this is a little, this is thorny, and I can't just go do all the math for you on the air because that would be totally boring. But anyway, check it out, and hopefully we can help you out. And, man, Social Security can sometimes be incredibly difficult. Okay. Before I went on vacation back in August, I wrote an article about disconnecting. And I got a bunch of emails in response to that. Brian wrote, taking vacation is not always that simple, even though I work in a finance department of 40 staff. My responsibility is administering grants from the government with the assistance of a accounts payable clerk. If you work independently and your work comes to a standstill, you have a lot of catching up when you get back. As I've often wondered, was the vacation really worth it upon my return? I'm not alone on this realization. I never use my vacation time, 20 days. Respectfully, Brian. Yeah, I mean, like, that doesn't seem fair to me. Like, we got to figure out a better system for you to be able to do this. And I know that it's hard to say that to your boss, but maybe you need to have that conversation. Someone who wrote, hope you have a great vacation. I've tried a few things which you mentioned in your article. It really works. If possible, avoid being in touch with anyone from your team. This will drive you to work. I did that except for with Mark, but he really tried to do this. Anyway, turn off the phone, the computer, whatever. Get the hell out. That's what Rob says. He says he's done it many times and he'll continue to do so. All right. It is the Jill on Money Show. We're not disconnecting from you right now. We are completely connected. And if you want to be connected to us, all you have to do is go to JillOnMoney.com. And in the top right corner, what does it say? Contact us. So contact us. Let us know what's going on. We'll be right back. You're back with Jill on Money, and before we finish up today, just a word. I did a segment on National Public Radio this week. Mark's going to put the segment on in the show notes, and he says to me, what did you say on that segment? You got all this hate tweeting, and the essence of the segment was about debt, and specifically credit cards, and it sort of came after this idea that 10 years after the financial crisis, how is debt, how much debt is being carried by people? Do we learn lessons? Those kinds of things. I had the audacity, I'm saying this with sarcasm, to suggest that you should not carry a credit card balance when you have a credit card because it costs more. And evidently, I got hate tweeted about that. And the essence of that hate was what, Mark? Was that I'm telling that people were mad because how can I expect that people can pay their balance off given the current conditions? That I'm out of touch. Okay. That is essentially the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Of course, I'm not out of touch. Do you want me to give the advice that is the best and smartest advice, or do you want me to tell you what's going to make you feel better about your condition? So, for example, if you are very much suffering health-wise, you've got terrible conditions, and you go to the doctor, and the doctor says, well, let me tell you some of the problems here. You're overweight, you don't exercise, and that's compounding your overall wellness. Here's what you need to do. Is it helpful in that moment for the doctor to say, you know what, let's go and explore the roots of why you got here? I'm on a 4.5 or 5 minute segment where I am being asked what is the best practices for credit card management. And to have someone then hate tweet that I'm out of touch. Of course, I know that people have credit card bills. Why? Why do they have credit card bills? Because they are spending money that they don't have. And so when you do that, your situation is only made worse. So don't be mad at me for giving the advice that's really in your best interest. Don't shoot the doctor for giving you the proper diagnosis. So anyway, listen to the segment. You tell me if you think I was out of line. That's it. That's the program. Thank you so much for listening. And thanks to Tony James and Teresa Ghilarducci, our guests. If you've got a question for us all week long, you can just send us an email. Ask Jill at JillOnMoney.com. All right, we will see you next week. Enjoy your first weekend of autumn.